All right, we're on to day 19, and today is going to be a big reveal episode. Full truth, I'm not doing this in real time. I'm actually doing this on Friday, even though it's supposed to be Sunday, but I just decided I needed to get this one off the deck because it's my daughter's birthday and I just want to spend time with her. So this is the one that I'm doing asynchronously, not the full download transmission, but I think you're going to appreciate today's episode because what I am going to share with you today is something that I have never shared before, the nitty gritty details of how I actually sold my blog and the specifics that likely no one is telling you and or you don't even know to consider. So this is the full truth. Here's kind of the introduction. In 2021, I sold my blog, which you can call it a glorified digital media company, but it was built on a website platform. It was built on a WordPress platform. So effectively, it was a blog that evolved into a digital media company. I sold it for 6 figures US. And everyone talks about the outcome, the sale price, the celebration. People were like, congratulations, that's amazing. But, and the reality is I didn't actually talk that much about this. So I didn't even really get a lot of congratulations and celebrations. And you'll see why, because nobody actually talks about the process or the timeline. And I certainly have not been able to share publicly until this point about the mistakes I made, the things that almost killed the deal, the things that I wish I had known. And so today what I want to do is walk you through exactly how it happened, the specifics in as much detail as I can recall, and that makes sense, and the steps and then the real challenges. Because if you are building something, whether you're building a blog, you're building a creator platform, you are building a creative business, you're a graphic designer, you are a coach, you are a mentor, you have some sort of IP and or brand, you might want to sell it one day. And I just figured it might be helpful if you knew what this looked like for me. Not the actual, fantasy, but the reality. And then also what I have learned since 2021 that probably would have changed a lot of things that I had done. So here's where we're going to start with this. What was I actually selling? What was I selling? It was a niche lifestyle blog that I had built from my kitchen table, learning how to code on WordPress and learning SEO and everything that went into that: web design, writing, content distribution. This was the early days. I had built it over about a decade. It started in approximately 2012. And fun fact, it started as a personal finance blog. And within a couple months, it became more about DIY and home improvement. Because I had just purchased my first home. So, and then as we got married and got more into parenting and lifestyle, it also then evolved again into a little bit more of a lifestyle platform. So at the time of the sale, this website ecosystem was consistently generating multi-6 figures in annual revenue. Now, that sounds like, whoa, I'm just going to throw a bunch of stuff on the internet and that's what's going to happen. It wasn't really that simple. There were multiple income streams. So I was leveraging display ads. I was in a niche display ad network that was assisting me in placing ads that made sense for my content. So contextual ads. They were also an application-only display ads network. So I will say I never used Google Ads, not once. I didn't use AdSense ever. I always went above and beyond with that website to get the highest value ad placements through a very niche ad network. So I was generating revenue through that. In some of my highest months, I was making $5,000 a month doing nothing, US, just on the display ads alone. I was also heavily leveraging sponsored content and branded content that then evolved into multimedia branded content and mainstream media branded content. So I was able to do written content that was distributed across my platforms. I was able to do visual content that was distributed across my platforms, and then eventually combine that with television and radio campaigns that I was doing for sponsors as well, that all fed into the same campaign. Alongside that, I was doing affiliate marketing. So I was heavily leveraging Amazon affiliates as well as a few other really high margin affiliate programs through the writing that I was doing. And then there was also in the early days some brand consulting. So I was just, I had an hourly rate that if you wanted to work with me and work through some of the nitty gritty of what it meant to grow a content company and leverage branded content, I was doing that kind of brand consulting. So by the end of it, I was averaging about 200,000 to 300,000 monthly page views, which for the time of when I put the website on the market, it was 2020. So for a niche blog, that was unreal, especially one built in Canada. I also had an extremely strong email list. At the time of sale, it was well over 10,000 subscribers on the email list. The bird in the hand I had was also my Pinterest. I had millions of followers or whatever they're called on Pinterest, and I was generating like tens of millions of impressions on my Pinterest account alone every single month. So Pinterest, SEO, email were my highest drivers of traffic to the website. And then very, very low down would have been like the Instagrams and the Facebooks, because the algorithm on both of those platforms changed midway and they became much less valuable to me from a specific revenue standpoint. They weren't driving significant traffic. They were driving brand. So the question is now, what made it sellable? And what made it sellable was the fact that I had consistent revenue history. I did not have one-hit wonders. I had consistent month-over-month revenue for more than 3 years that I was able to show using the various dashboards that I had. So my accounting dashboard, because that showed all of the revenue, my ads dashboard through the ad network that I was working with had all the historical information there. My affiliate dashboard, I had consistent revenue every single month for 3 years. And I was also able to articulate that in terms of profit and loss. So how much was it costing me to maintain, run, and grow the website? And then how much was I actually making? So we've talked about profit. We talked about profit a couple of videos and podcasts ago, right? I was creating a hugely profitable business on paper. The other thing that was really useful to me at the time, which I didn't even realize, was that the income was so diversified. It was not just dependent on one thing. It was like 10 different things all contributing to this pot of money that I was bringing in every single month. I also had some systemization. So I had templates. I had a really solid website that was really easy to use and to populate. I had things on schedules. So in some respect, I had a documented process. And, I want to say I had clean financials. Now that I run 2 companies and a complex team and everything, I'm like, wow, yeah, it was actually pretty simple, those financials. So the financials were well in order and they were easy to look at and kind of understand, okay, this is what's coming in here, and this is the US dollars, and this is the Canadian dollars, and this is the sponsor income. This is the affiliate income. It was really easy to see where everything was coming from. So the question a lot of folks have is like, why did you decide to sell it? Well, here, let me back up actually. We talked about what made it sellable. Here's what actually made it not sellable. And it all kind of coalesced with my decision to sell. I decided to sell because I had been blogging for over a decade and I felt really hemmed in. I felt like I was having to leverage my life, again, commoditize myself in order to make money. The other thing that started happening was the world got really noisy and everyone and their monkey decided that they could be an influencer. And so the market started to get flooded. I also saw agencies who were not my primary target. I used to try to go directly to the brand and forge a relationship with the brand rather than agencies. But I started to see agencies get really aggressive with their pricing. And it was getting harder and harder to justify, what I wanted to do and work with them. And it started to feel like a slog. The other thing that I saw coming was AI. And I didn't know how to articulate it at the time, but I was like, the internet is changing and all of this SEO traffic that I am getting right now is great. But I had this sinking feeling that it was really going to rapidly change and go away. not a bad thing if I had been committed to the content and to shifting and pivoting once again. But remember, 10 years in, I had been shifting and pivoting and learning and adapting and teaching and growing and this and that for 10 years to get it to this point. And if you've been listening to me for any length of time, you know that at some point I kind of get bored and like I've got to take what I have learned and adapt it and evolve. And I just felt like, what am I going to evolve for? Just to chase more eyeballs, just to keep myself on a hamster wheel of constant creation. And it just really stopped feeling good. And there were personal pressures going on. I was wanting something more for myself than to compete for the image of a lifestyle that didn't feel sustainable and certainly didn't feel like a eggs all in one basket type business. So, if I were to do things differently, I would probably have asked myself the question, am I selling because I'm burnt out or because I think this is really the strategic move? And I think it was really a combination of both. I knew the timing was right for me. I knew that I needed to step into something else. Story Studio Network hadn't fully fleshed into anything at that point, but I could feel and sense this energy was shifting in me and that I needed to give myself options. So when we talk about something that being sellable and ready and what I would have done differently if I were to start today is I probably would have reconsidered the depth at which that my personal brand was intertwined with the website's brand. Because one of the hardest things that I had to do and the most expensive things that I had to do was back myself and my children out of that website in order to neutralize it so that somebody could walk in and take it over very easily and just continue on with the work. When we're talking about exit strategy and selling a business, this is known as the owner's trap, right? Nobody wants to buy a business that is 100% or even more than 50% reliant on the owner. And most of my website was reliant on me, my face, my capabilities in media, and all of those things. So I actually paid somebody because it was such a huge task. I mean, like imagine this blog website, like 800 articles, thousands of photos. I think I was paying $500 a month in website hosting fees because of the size of that personal website. It was massive. It was a behemoth. So I had to pay someone to help me do it. I was like, if I have to do this, I am going to go insane doing it by myself. It was going to take way too long. So I paid someone to do it and it wasn't cheap. She helped me and she really sped up the process of sanitizing the website. The other thing that was a challenge was then a lot of the brand partnerships were really based on my personality, and certainly the media work was not going to be something that was duplicatable. So I had to go back through the financials and really look at which revenue streams were mine and which revenue streams belonged to the business. And in truth, that affected the valuation because yes, I was doing $200,000, $300,000 a year, but was that entire revenue bucket duplicatable by someone else? No, it wasn't. Only about half of it was, because half of it was my media work. Half of it was my brand sponsorships. So I had to go back and look at the profit and loss statement and re-highlight what I thought was reasonable for someone to come in and actually duplicate and take over. So if I were to do this again, I would have done that from the start. Not because I was concerned about how much money I got out of the sale. I was pretty happy with it, but because I probably could have gotten a little more if I had had the forethought when I started building to be like, oh, maybe one day someone wants to take this over. But when you start a personal blog, you don't think like that. I give myself some grace. I'm going to give myself some kind of like forgiveness for, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And so now I know. The other thing I guess we can talk about is that the transition to the new owner, regardless of the fact that I did all of this upfront work, was really not straightforward. And part of it was because it was such a legacy property. I liken it to buying like an historical home, right? You're buying a website that's more than a decade old. There are skeletons there in the tech stack. There are old email addresses. There's all kinds of stuff that crops up that causes complications in the sale, because what you want to be able to do is just give them the keys to the kingdom and let them run it for a few months, make sure they've got it all handled, and then walk away so that you're in this escrow period where they're just making sure everything is what you said it is, and then you can walk away. And that really is not how my experience went at all. So once I made the decision, cleaned the website, that took about 6, maybe 8 months to do, I started investigating what can I actually get for this site. And this was my first understanding of something that is now I understand deeply because I work with clients who work in this space, is called a multiple. So a multiple is effectively your profit margin times a certain number is what somebody will pay you to take over your business based on what they think they can generate in cash over the course of time. So I'll give you an example. So let's say, just for easy math, your profit margin is $100,000 a year. You're going to go to market with a multiple of 2x. So you're going to sell your $100,000 a year website for $200,000, and someone's going to pay you $200,000 with the understanding that it's going to take them 2 years of running that website just the way it is in order to recoup their investment. Okay. So that's a really rudimentary way of explaining a multiple. When it comes to, and that's how it works with businesses, is that you pay, if you're going to go buy like a nail salon or something like that, you're going to pay a multiple based on the revenue numbers that business is generating. The difference is with digital properties is you actually pay a multiple of the monthly. You don't pay a multiple of the annual. And so this is where it got really important for me to document month by month what was coming in, because digital revenue is not steady. Digital revenue is highly based on seasonality. I would have huge surges over Christmas. I'd have huge surges over January. Q1 was massive for me because a lot of my content was about organizing, cleaning, decluttering. And that's when people are in those kinds of mind frames. So I had to really look at what is my month over month profit margin. And then the other thing that comes with websites is that the multiples tend to be way, way higher. So when you sell a website, you're actually looking instead of like a 2, 3, 4, 5x with a typical business, you are actually looking at multiples of 20, 24, 28, 36. And so I had to, but remember, it's 36 per of your monthly revenue, not your yearly revenue, right? If someone paid me 36 times 100,000, that would have been a totally different situation than somebody paying me 36 times my monthly profit. So I had to go through 3 years worth of financials and figure out what the average monthly profit was, and then figure out what multiple I wanted to go to market for, and then create a case for that and put it up on the market. And when I say put it up on the market, there are a few places that you can go if you are selling a digital property, and it's basically like a real estate brokerage for your website. So I did my research. I selected one. I worked with them in order to get all of the pieces, the bits and pieces together. And the way that it works is you put it up on the market, you list out why somebody should buy it, you talk about the multiples, you talk about that monthly margin, you list the niche and some statistics about the website, how long it's been around, the domain authority, all of those things. You effectively create a real estate listing for your website. And then what happens is if somebody expresses interest, the brokerage will give them certain keys to certain back-end elements. So your Google Analytics, they'll give them view-only access to it. So it's like an open house. They get to go into the back of your website and look and see what's going on and see if it is, in fact, what you say it is. If there's something there that entices them, then they're able to make an offer. The broker will present you with the offer. You can go back and counter. You can take multiple offers. You can do so on and so forth. And then if and when the sale goes through, the brokerage will deal with that. They'll put it in escrow, take their fees off the top, and then you get the rest. That's how it's supposed to work. Okay. Didn't work that way for me. So I posted the website for, I believe our original posting was just over $100,000 USD. I can't remember the exact amount now. And it sat and I kept getting really low ball, like really, really low ball offers that were frankly pissing me off, right? Like we were up over 100,000 on the market value, on the valuation. And then people are coming back and being like, we'll give you 30,000. And I was like, this is the worst. I'm not doing this. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'd rather just close it down and take my residuals, because the other thing to know about digital is that what you are doing today, you probably, I think I already said this, but you won't get paid for today for another 6 months. So I did have a bit of residuals like coming in, and I did right up until about 2023, I was still getting residual, like teeny tiny checks just coming in the mail. So I actually made a decision. It had sat there and I was getting low balls. I took it off the market, and I decided that I was just going to like not go through with this. And so lo and behold, I got an email, and it was from these two guys who were running a capital investment firm in the States. And they said, hey, we had been looking at your website and we're considering adding it to our portfolio. And then we noticed you took it off the market. Did you sell it? Is it still for sale? What's going on? And I was like, this is an opportunity. Cool. So I went back to them. I said, no, I didn't sell it. I just decided to take it off the market. What are you suggesting? And they came back and they offered me essentially what I thought I was going to get, 6 figures. And I said, cool, let's boogie. So we ended up doing a private sale. They decided to pay the brokerage half of the brokerage fee simply because they felt it was ethical to pay the brokerage, because that's where they originally found me, which I felt really good about, that they had scruples in that respect. I didn't have to pay brokerage fees though, which was good for me. The things that I then had to do, what that I didn't anticipate, because they were in the United States, I had to set up a United States bank account in order to receive the funds, because the funds were so large. I had to declare a whole bunch of tax like it was just a whole thing to even get it set up for me to receive the money. Then the other thing that they came back and requested was to pay me monthly over the course of about 16 months. Instead of in a lump sum, which severely impacted my ability to take that money and do what I wanted to do with that money, because originally I had planned on just getting this big lump sum. So now you see why it took me so long. It was like the very long goodbye. But what I did is I just let the money accrue in the escrow account. I did use some of it to pay operating fees and to start up Story Studio Network. So at the end of the day, I didn't ever have that $100,000 or whatever sitting in my account all at once. I just never ended up having that because I was spending some of it and investing into the growth of the company as it was coming in as capital payments. So effectively, they were leasing the site to buy it. As that was happening, they took the keys to the site over, they redesigned the site, they skinned the site, they changed the monetization on the site. They did all of that, and they were allowed to do that. But the final key was that I had to hand the domain over and the registration over once the last payment was made. So that all happened, but it took about 16 months, and I was exhausted by the end. So the sale went through in 2020, and I didn't actually finish up with all of it until the very, very end of 2021. And it was super exhausting. So how would I do it differently if I had to go back and do it differently? Is I would have built it in a way that it didn't require so much upfront work in order to go to market. I just didn't know. So now I'm doing things differently in my business. I'm thinking about things through a different lens. If you can build something like that, small, and exit, it wasn't life-changing amount of money. Like, let's not be like, I wasn't selling for millions of dollars, but it was like a decent chunk of change that gave me about a year of buffer to try something new in business. And that's exactly what I did. And it taught me to be brave, and it taught me about my value, and it taught me what I can do with consistency and a dedication to learning and asking questions and figuring things out on my own. Because listen, if I had never had the fortitude to sit down and be like, I'm going to start a blog and I'm just going to figure this out and I'm going to fumble my way forward, and some things are going to work and some things are going to feel good and some things are going to feel bad, but I'm just going to keep going because at the end of this, I'm going to learn something incredible. I never would have had any of that experience. And I certainly wouldn't have had the experience of selling my own personal website for, more than almost we paid for our mortgage when we got it. That's craziness to me, right? And so now I'm thinking about, are there things that you can build that are worth money that create these micro sale moments that can add influx of cash into your life, not just into your business. And it's really changed the way that I think about how I grow and how I create value and frankly, being organized and what that means. And so I want to share that with you because whether you have a blog or you have a creative business, think about this. In 5 years, if somebody came and said, I want to buy your business for this much money, would you be able to hand them the keys? Or how difficult would that be for you, regardless of the energy and the identity piece, but like operationally, how hard would it be for you to walk away and let somebody else run it? It's a really valuable question to answer. And if you can answer that question clearly, then you've got something that maybe potentially one day you could sell. And that's like a massive, massive PowerPoint to be at. So I hope you learned something from this. And certainly if there are things that I left out, there's probably tons that I left out that you have questions about. Feel free to drop a comment, whether you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening to this on your favorite podcast platform. Drop me a comment on Instagram or a question in the DMs on Instagram. I will happily address in upcoming episodes. Certainly drop something on YouTube. I can do a special series to answer questions. But I thought it was really important. It was time to kind of explain how this all happened and how it wasn't just cut and dry, and how besides the identity piece and the energetics, there was a lot of work behind the scenes and a lot of trust and a lot of dedication to making sure that this sale happened. And yes, there is tons and tons and tons that I would now do differently. We are more than halfway through this series now, folks, and I am just deriving so much energy. One thing I will let you know if you're still here is that this has given me a lot of interest in YouTube and figuring out how to grow my presence on YouTube. So I think for the rest of the year, I am going to focus some energy on learning more about YouTube. What I have learned so far is that what I am doing is not YouTube optimal. Just posting the raw video. I'm going to keep doing it because the transmission series is cool and it's going to live on my channel. But I think I'm going to start switching things up and being a little more strategic on the YouTube channel starting in November. So I'm really excited about that. And yeah, I'm curious your thoughts on how all of this is transpiring. Thanks so much for listening. I will see you, or you'll hear me tomorrow.